This interruption lasted longer than any other. His observations and utterances on divorce had brought up a storm of disagreement among the scholars, and it was some time before they could compose themselves. There was heard in the meantime a crackling of parchment as they unrolled their scrolls and pointed out to each other the exact passage in which their ancient teacher Moses had given his permission to divorce. Their faces grew obstinate, and with violent gestures they shook their heads, saying, "No!" As against this, they were nearly all in accord with him when he bade them have faith in God and take no care for the morrow. He told them to look at the birds of the air, which neither sow nor harvest nor gather into barns, but which their Father in heaven feeds. And are ye not better than they? And why do you take thought for raiment? Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They toil not, neither do they spin. Yet I say unto you that Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. And he pointed to the flowers blossoming at his feet. If God so clothe the grass of the field, which today is, and tomorrow is cast into the oven, shall he not clothe you, O you of little faith? It is a beautiful saying. I heard a happy voice, and the faces of the poor were filled with beatitude at the thought that they would no longer need to toil or spin, to sow or reap, or prepare against the winter rains, but would put their trust in God, who would feed them like the birds of the air, and clothe them like the flowers of the field. Some of the scholars were, indeed, moved to hostility, and their foreheads became covered with wrinkles, but others among them smiled, but more, I think, for the charming similes of the rhapsodist than for the substance of wisdom that lay concealed in them. When he had finished preaching, he came down from the summit of the hill. His face was pale with the sustained effort, but in his great eyes shone a light of release. He had become sad for sheer joy, and he was beautiful to look on, with a strange beauty which I had never seen before. A peace that was not of this earth rested on him. Then something happened to me which I remember clearly, but for which I have never been able to find an explanation. The moment he descended from the summit, he was swallowed in a circle of rabbis and scholars who engaged him in discussion. Some unrolled their parchments and showed him the passages of Holy Writ which were in contradiction with certain of his utterances, but there was disagreement among the scholars, for several supported his views. During the discussion, the plain folk drew off respectfully, not daring to approach the scholars and interrupt the sacred occasion. But before long, Simon, perceiving that his teacher was weary with the long strain of preaching, intruded boldly into the circle and implored him to leave the others and rest himself on the grass. It may have been also that the disciple feared that the discussion would lead to a break. However, no sooner had the preacher withdrawn to a side than the common people left their places impetuously and closed in on him. Now their joy broke out without restraint. Cries of love and admiration and delight filled the air. One would have said that here was a hero who had just returned from the battlefield, bringing victory. Some bent and kissed the hem of his robe. Others were content if they came near enough to touch it. And suddenly there were youngsters also, children who had remained in the background till now. Their parents brought them forward to have him place his hands on them and bless them. Suddenly there were also numbers of the sick, who pushed their way frantically through to him. The disciples struggled with the multitude, particularly the sons of the woman Zebedee, but they could not clear a way for him. It was only when Simon lifted him up in his iron arms and carried him off that the circle was broken. Even so, the multitude streamed after them like a torrent bursting through a dam. And the thing that happened to me was this. I repeat it with shame, but it is the truth. I, the Syriarch of Jerusalem, forgot my dignity, my standing, and my identity. With the centurion of Capharnaum, who was in no better case, I had joined the enthusiastic multitude, and I ran with it now as if I were part of it, and as if the sermon had been meant for me too. To this degree had I and my friend forgotten ourselves. It was less astonishing in the centurion, for he had long been subject to the influence of the Jews. But I, the commander of the Antonia citadel, the right-hand man of the procurator Pontius Pilate, that I should behave in this incredible fashion. I confess, here and now, that at the time of the Sermon on the Hill, I came within a hand's breadth of yielding to the man's magic. Shall I go further and reveal the final details? Caught up in that atmosphere of wonder, I approached, and for the first time in my life made obeisance to a Jew. When he saw this, he stood still and regarded me with an expression of pain and compassion, and I felt something in me breaking. What is most amazing in all this, I speak of it with difficulty, is that at the moment I was not even ashamed of my subjection to him. That emotion overwhelmed me later, but at the time I was aware of a struggle within me, evoked by the mournful and compassionate eyes which he bent on me, a struggle between anger and yearning. The pale face, fringed with the young beard, the frail body, the slender neck, the expression of infinite pity touched me so that I felt very near to him. I was aware also of something beyond my comprehension hovering about him, so that I was not free from fear too. Then I remembered myself. Anger took the upper hand. I turned hastily and said to my friend, "Come, let us go from here." And I fled. It was the awareness of my fear which had pulled me up in time.